Okay. So welcome tonight, everybody. I am Kara, and I am the Adult Services Librarian at the Oregon Public Library. And so tonight we have Oscar Herrera with us, who will be sharing with us how Wisconsin changed his life. Tonight's presentation will be in a conversation format. So I'll have some questions for Oscar, and he'll answer them. And then we'll have time for any questions you have. If you're joining us from home, you can ask questions by using the chat on YouTube or by emailing me at kripley@oregonlibrary.org. So this program is being recorded, so if you're in the room here, please silence your phone or turn it off or whatever. And then I want to thank Oscar because he is donating his time tonight to do this program.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here, Kara. Thank you for inviting me.
So those were my housekeeping announcements. So now we'll get started. So Oscar has written a book called Wisconsin Changed My Life. And so we're going to start at the very beginning. You mentioned in your book that you were born and raised in Mexico City. So tell us what your childhood was like.
Well, to start with, Mexico City has beautiful weather year-round. It's just beautiful. So this is like I grew up in the 60s where, you could go out in the streets and play and ride your bicycle and things like that. And right across from where I lived, which was a middle-class suburb from a middle-class family, was the school that I attended. And the school was run by priests that came from St. John's, Minnesota. And yes, very interesting. And the concept was that they wanted to introduce English as a part of the curriculum, and they also brought football and things like that. So all the staff were American priests, and the childhood was beautiful. They had Boy Scouts, they had Cub Scouts. So I was a Cub Scout when I was 10 years old, a Boy Scout when I was 14 years old. They had a program that was the exchange student program, and I was lucky enough to join the program. So when I was 15 years old, I went to Michigan for two months. I spent two months in Michigan, and with a little English that they would be able to instruct us, I kind of started getting the hang of the language. They brought football to as part of their teachings.
American football?
American football.
Okay.
So I played when I was in 6th grade with all the old helmets that you now see in museums. And it was, they were the leather helmets and things like that. And then when I was in high school, I played junior varsity, and we would go to Texas and play against American teams. Very interesting. And this was all through the connections that the priests had with the other priests in Texas. So it was a wonderful childhood, and I had all the opportunities, and it was very, very nice, very nice.
Well, that sounds like
peaceful.
Yeah.
The streets were quiet, and there wasn't any risk of anything. Even though it was a big city, it was peaceful. There weren't any risk of any kind, and all the kids would go out and mingle and play, and it was a wonderful childhood.
And what was college like in Mexico?
College was, it's a little different than in the United States. For one thing, there are no dorms. That was a big difference. So I went to it's called the National University of Mexico. So I lived at home, and my house was in the north side of town. So I had to commute from the north way to the south. The campus was beautiful. It's in the south part of the city. The university purchased an incredible amount of land, and it was a gorgeous campus with trees and football fields and swimming pool, a huge swimming pool. The only bad thing is that it was overcrowded. We had the campus, I think, held close to 100,000 students. And even though it was a huge campus, sometimes you couldn't take advantage of all the facilities and so on because of the amount of students that we had. So I studied economics. That was the field that I chose. It took me 5 years. It was, intense. Since it was a public college, sometimes there were some strikes and things like that from the students or some workers demanding something, sometimes the professors and so on. So, there wasn't the continuation that you see here. I mean, it's very rare to see a university going on strike here, but it wasn't unusual to shorten the semesters because of the situations that the students were demanding and things like that. I got to play football, more football, in the junior varsity team, and the coach had the Colorado University system, so our coach used to love to say that he had the Colorado system and things like that. So wonderful time. I studied from 1970 to 1974, graduated in 1974. It was a good time, good professors, tenured professors. Some of them have studied abroad, and very, very, in general, a very, very good education.
Great. So how did you decide to go to graduate school at UW-Madison, and what was your experience?
Very interesting, very interesting. So, I finished my college education, my bachelor's degree, and somehow, my brother and I followed the same path. We went to the same high school, we went to the exchange student program, we both studied economics. So when we finished, we thought he got a job and I got an internship, and somehow it didn't fit well, neither for him or for me. So we decided to go and join a master's program in Mexico, very close to Mexico City, and we studied the field of agricultural economics. So we finished that program. I got a job, he got a job. He got a job as an assistant professor in the school where we studied agricultural economics. I lived at home. That was a normal thing for students, single students to live at home, different than here in the United States. But anyway, so one day at a gathering, he came and says, guess what? I'm going to go and study a PhD program in University of Wisconsin-Madison. I applied, was accepted, and I'm leaving. And he was married, I was single. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're kidding. He said, no, I just decided that, I want to be a professor when I come back, blah, blah, blah. And so he took off. He came to Madison. So I was like, oh my gosh, so he's gone. We both have a master, but now he's going to have a PhD. And so I said, I'm going to research universities. So I did some research, and I wanted to go to England to study, Great Britain. So I researched several universities. And so to make the story shorter, my brother said, come and visit Madison. It's beautiful. The campus is gorgeous. The university is incredible, the location, Madison, and so on. So I came and visited him. And he was right. It was just amazing to see the campus, the university, and started researching programs. And they had one, related to economics, that was my field, and a little bit of agriculture, that was development studies, which is economic development. So, I went through the process of applying and so on, and it took me a couple years. You have to submit, the transcripts and letters of reference, all the requirements from graduate school. So I was accepted in the program. So I came in 1979, January 79, which was brutal. The temperature was horrible. It was just really, it was so cold. I remember the temperature when I registered was minus 28 degrees, minus 28 degrees.
Oh my goodness.
So it was really, really hard. But the experience that I had, one thing is that I thought I knew English, and I thought like I could perform well and stuff. I had taken what is called test of English as a foreign language. Mm-hmm. So I thought it was good, but I was in shock when I went to my first, to the PhD program. I came to study to the PhD program. I couldn't understand anything. It was so hard. And so I lived in a dorm on Johnson Street and Whitty Hall, and all the roommates would go and party, things like that. And for me, it was extremely hard, because I had to do quizzes and this and that. The only good thing is after one semester, I moved to an apartment, and then that's where I met my wife, my wife that is sitting here with me. She was in law school, I was in graduate school, and we spent, 3 years studying. We took some classes that were similar. Well, I think we attended some of the same classes and things. We wrote papers together, and we were friends, and then we started dating, and it was a great time. So I spent 4 years here at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. So it was very hard in the beginning, extremely hard, just to get the pace that they demand for graduate classes. But great experience. I love Madison. The city was beautiful. I did everything that I wanted to do. I did sports. I studied. I enjoyed the city. It was a wonderful experience. Wonderful experience.
And so, what did you do after graduate school?
Well, then Ruby and I, my wife Ruby, we had talked about probably getting married. We had decided to get married, and I said, well, I want to go and work in Mexico. So I went back to Mexico, got a job. Ruby arranged all the things for the wedding. I came back. One weekend we got married. We went back to Mexico with my brand new wife. So, I had a very decent job down in Mexico. It was very demanding. I worked for government, for the Department of Agriculture. The work was from 9 in the morning to 9 at night, with a couple hours of lunch break or whatever. Sometimes I would spend long hours till 1 a.m. and so on. So it was a good job. Very demanding, extremely demanding. I think Ruby was alone for the most part. I mean, her law degree, she really couldn't apply because of, the system. It wasn't exactly compatible with the knowledge that she had. The commute at that time, when I grew up in Mexico, it was beautiful city. At this time, when we were living there, it was busy, very hectic. I mean, we were the millions of people. So we both missed a lot being in Wisconsin, in United States, and our life that we had together in Wisconsin. So it was a good job, but it was a very hard life living.
Yeah. So how did you end up back in Wisconsin?
Well, what happens is that the job that I had, it was an appointed position. It was a high up position that I was a division administrator for a huge planning department, and there was an announcement made by the newspaper that the president of Mexico was going to remove the head of the department where I was working, and all of the staff was going to be removed. So, unconsciously, I was hoping that there would be a change. I couldn't just quit my job. So I thought like, if there could be some kind of change, something that would be a catalyzer for me to make a change, because Ruby and I miss living in Madison, miss the law and order of Wisconsin, the open space and things like that. I mean, Mexico City is a lot of people, and we used to live in the business district in Mexico City, so it was hard to exercise and things like that, very demanding. So when they announced that there was going to be this change, I said, oh my God, this is the opportunity that I was waiting for. So we didn't have children, and we said, well, why don't we just kind of sell the little things that we have? I mean, maybe my parents, out of goodwill or pity, they said, well, just leave your stuff, we'll give you a couple dollars here. I sold the car, talked to Ruby, and I said, Ruby, let's go back to Wisconsin and see what happens. Let's start a new life. I wasn't young. I was like around 35 years old, you know. By the time I studied my bachelor's, my master's, I got another master in Madison, so I went to school forever, you know. And then, but that was my choice. But at 35, we said, okay, let's try to see if we can make a living back in the United States.
So in your book, it seems like one of the most challenging times was when you were trying to get your first job here. So can you talk about that?
That was probably the hardest thing that I have ever done in my life, or in the sense that I thought, oh, somehow I'm going to get a job. But the reality was that I came and, you know, I started inquiring about how to get a job. First, I had to get their proper documents. You know, I have to have a permanent residency and things like that, which was a straightforward process, and I did that. And then, you know, I started sending letters to financial institutions and insurance companies and different places where I thought they would have the need for an economist like me with my training, and all I would get were rejection letters, nothing. At best was rejection letters. So 1 month went by, another and another, and I applied for a community action and you know, program and things like that, and I didn't get any responses. It was into the third month, but I was looking for work every single day. So I came and visited one of my professors here, and I said, you know, this is the situation and things like that. And he said, you know, you should try something that is called the civil service. I said, I never heard of that word, civil service. And he said, well, the civil service is where you work for the state. Pretty much what you used to do in Mexico for the federal government. Here is the state. So you just go to a library and look for civil service jobs. So I went back to Manesha, where I was living with Ruby. That's where she was from. And went to the library, and I said, I would like to see civil service jobs. And said, sure, there's a list, and big list. But they were looking for plumbers, nurses, parole agents, and things like that. And I said, no, this is like economics. So every 2 weeks I would go and research and so on. And finally I saw one job that was a planning analyst. And I thought, oh, I can do that. You had to do some number analysis and policy analysis and things like that. And I said, I can apply for that. So they said, well, if you are interested in this job, you have to take a test. So I went to Fond du Lac, to the technical school in Fond du Lac, and there was a huge room, and full of people. And I came into the room and I said, oh my gosh, all these people are applying for one program planning analyst in the Department of Corrections. And the proctor, the person that was taking care of the room, he says, you think there are a lot of people here? Just think of the amount of people that are in Madison taking the same test, And I'm like, holy cow, I'm applying, you know, I'm competing with all kinds of different people. So to make the story short, I took the test, and they said, you know, you're going to get a number. And, you know, I could go and look for the envelope from the state to see my number or whatever. So I got a number that said 70, Oscar Herrera 70. And he said, if you get over 65, you will be qualified to get interviews. And I said, all right. So they called me from the Department of Corrections. I went. I was all with a suit coat and all of that. And, you know, I had brought from Mexico one suit, my tie and everything. Went to the Department of Corrections, and they were very, you know, with khaki pants and things like that. I was in shock. I said, what? I don't. But anyway, I interviewed, and great interview, and, you know, I talked about what I could do and so on. And at the end, the last question was, and what is your experience in corrections in the state of Wisconsin? Oh, I don't have any. I don't. Well, I got a rejection letter. You know, we chose somebody else. The same happened with the Department of Agriculture, Department of Health, Department of Transportation. You know, I would come to Madison, had a great interview, and at the end they would say, and what is your experience in agriculture in the state of Wisconsin? No, I can learn, and I go, okay. So another rejection letter, another. So I applied for an extension agent job, and I didn't get it, and it was all kinds of different jobs. There was a Cardinal Street College. They were looking for a professor, part-time professor. I applied, and they said, you're very well qualified, but we're looking for somebody that is employed now, so you're not the person that we're looking for. One day, I answered the phone at Ruby's house, and there was another job offer with the state. And they said, this is the Department of Administration and Division of Energy, blah, blah, blah. I'm telling you all this story because that was a very hard time in my life, very hard time. So yes, I want the interview. I'll take the interview. So I hang up, and I said, well, was that the Department of Energy, Division of Administration, or Department of Administration, Division? I was confused. So I called the person back, and I said, I just talked to you, and he said, oh, whoa, I don't think you understand. It's in the coastal section of the Division of Energy of the Department of Administration. Are you sure you want the interview? And I said, yes, I'll take the interview, whatever. So I talked to my wife, Ruby, and I said, what is the coast of Wisconsin? I mean, I think of Mexico, there's a lot of the oceans and things. I said, well, it must be the Great Lakes. So I went, and as I did before in the older interviews that I had, I did a lot of research and things like that. And I thought, okay, must be Lake Michigan, Lake Superior, whatever. So I prepared. I came to Madison, went to one of it's called Jeff Building, General Executive Facility buildings close to the Capitol. So I was in an interview just like what we're having here. And right when they said, well, tell us about your education and experience, they were drilling right behind me. It was 12:15 at noon. I mean, it was horrible. And I was like, oh my gosh, So I started to be very professional, and I said, no, let me tell you, I came to studying with them. Terrible. And the panel, the three people that were interviewing, started chuckling, And I was just like, no, I can't be, and roaring, And they started laughing at me. I mean, I was like, I think they thought, well, this poor guy or something. And I was raising my voice and things like, well, terrible. So within 25 minutes, they said, you know what, that's enough of the interview. Yeah, you did well. We're sorry, ask her for whatever, but you're done. The shortest interview that I had. But they didn't ask about my experience in coastal issues. So Ruby came with me to Madison, and she, how was your interview? This was 8 months looking every single day for work, every single day. There wasn't a whisper of any possibility for me to work, nothing. So Ruby, we have the tulips here in May and so on. It's a fiasco, the interview. I told her what I experienced and so on. And so we went to Manesh, and I said, you know what, I'm done. I cannot find work. Everybody around me has work. The only person that doesn't have work is me. I'm done. Every single day I look for work. I do whatever I can, and I was the mail retriever. I cut lawn and things like. I even thought that I could open a Mexican restaurant, which I didn't know anything about it. Soccer coach was volunteer stuff. So I said, and Ruby says, if you want, we can go back to Mexico and rethink our lives all over again. That next day, I was sweeping the floor, and Ruby called me and said, you have a telephone call from Carol Kotchal from Department of Administration from Madison. So I ran upstairs, and I said, yes. And I said, well, we want to offer you the job. It's a program planning analyst with $10.38 per hour. And could you let us know? Of course, I said, yes, I'll take the job. So that was my first job, and it was just such a thrill to be employed as well, with my knowledge of economics in a coastal program. So that was, but it was 8 months of hell for me. That nobody wanted to offer me. That was the first and only job that I was offered. So, very hard.
Wow. Wow. So then what was your experience those first years you were in state government?
Very hard, very hard. For one thing, I didn't know anything about coastal management, the coastal Wisconsin, so I had to learn the Coastal Zone Management Act of 1972 as amended. I had to learn about the Corps of Engineers that deal with the dams, locks and dams here, the Bureau of Reclamation and things like that. But I think the hardest thing for me was that, the system was totally different. Obviously, the standards were high. I mean, they couldn't make a concession because of my understanding of the system. So I would go and give presentations about what the coastal management program was all about, and people, the audience, could look at me like, "We don't understand what you're saying." So I had to kind of reword things, and it was very scary, very scary. That was the time when there weren't computers, and you would dictate letters by phone to a central pool, typing pool. And I would get my letter back with question marks and say, what, we couldn't understand what you were saying, what is it? So it was really, really hard. And I started at the bottom of this classification that is planning analyst. So it was a planning analyst 3. To move from this classification 3 to a 4, you had to pass like at least 3 years, and the raise was like $1. And just took me years as working as a planning analyst. But that wasn't one thing. The other thing that was kind of scary was that these were federal funds. So every year I had to write a proposal, send it to Washington, and they would approve my funds, for this group of people. We were 4 in this program. And if we didn't get the funds, we didn't have a job. So it was, and people were just kind of appalled. They say, well, how can you live like that? You have to apply every year to get funds and I said, well, that's what it is, so I'll do it. So one year, and after the other, I just kind of moved from planning analyst 3 to 4 to 5, but it took me like 12 years. It was very hard, but very satisfying job, and just that was the way it is. And I was happy to be in Madison again.
Yeah. So you mentioned in your book that you had to do other gigs to supplement your income. So what did you have to do?
As I said, I started with $10.38. So after, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years, I was at $13, $14, which wasn't a lot. Ruby was working, and we tried to complement our incomes, but I said, no, I have to do something else. And so I went to a placement agency, and I said, I got permission from the state. Can I have other job? And said, as long as it doesn't relate to the job that you have here. So I went to this placement agency, talked about my background, that I knew the culture in Mexico, blah, 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 that I work for the state, and so on. And the person said, open your own consulting company. I said, oh, great idea, never thought about it. So I zeroed in, and I thought, I'm going to be a consultant. I'm going to call this company Mexico, Wisconsin Business Consulting Services. So we did brochures and sent them out. And come to find out, this was a serious job. I mean, you have to be full-time doing that. So I would get, this brochure that I sent, I would get, some kind of response. I would call them, and they didn't know what was going on. I had to travel, so I had to juggle my state job with this other stuff. And so eventually I met a person here in Madison from the Douglas Stewart Company. It's a company that deals with supplies for the universities. And we did some consulting. We took them to Mexico. They opened a distributorship, but they also had little teddy bears, like stuffed animals. And I thought, these could sell in Mexico. So I'm going to skip several things that I describe in the book, but I started exporting, my wife and I, it was the company, exporting these teddy bears, first a little box, and then 2 boxes, then 5 boxes, and then eventually, it grew to be containers. We would buy, big quantities of teddy bears, ship them to Mexico, and we would distribute the teddy bears. And so that was one gig. With the revenues, with the monies that we got, Ruby and I lived in an apartment, and we decided to build a house. So I was fascinated with the house building. It was just incredible for me to see how they would erect houses, and we decided that we had saved some money from these things, and we decided that we wanted to build a new house. So I was at the site, blah blah blah. So what happens is that we moved to this house, and talking to a colleague in the state government, he said, "Oh, how much did you pay for the house?" So I told him, and he said, "Oh no, that house could be built for at least they rip you off. You pay too much. That house can be built for almost half of what you pay for." So I talked to my friend, and I got excited about it, and I said, "I'm going to build houses. That's what I'm going to do." So, of course, I thought it was going to be easy. It wasn't easy at all. I went to banks, and I would say, I would like to build a house. I have, this plan and so on. I have plumbers and this and that. Through my colleague, that he had friends in different trades and so on. And of course, the bank said, no. So I got to one bank, and the banker said, you have to have a lot. I mean, just to off the cuff this project. So actually, we ended up building houses. I ended up building houses, and I would sell them myself to avoid the realtor, and I would dress as a realtor. It was a long process, but I could clean the site and everything that I could do to kind of to handle to minimize the cost and so on. And we built 3 houses, and I sold them, and that complemented my income. So sounds easy, but it was extremely hard, not being a builder and all the complications that you can think of building a house, and the loans and payments and things like that. My wife, always there with me doing this and that. We had children at that time, and it was just complicated. But the common denominator was that I was always looking for opportunities, and they claim that luck is when opportunity encounters a prepared mind. I was always looking, and I was looking for whatever I could, improve and things like that. So I was on the look of things, and it worked out. So those were the additional gigs. And I have my state job. Yeah. So it was complicated.
Wow. So how did you move up in state government?
Well, so when I started as a planning analyst, I got to a point that you couldn't go higher in that classification. It was a program planning analyst 5. And they told me, if you want other jobs, you have to kind of move around to other agencies. That's the only way you can do it. So it's either that, or you have to be political. I didn't know anybody, didn't know Republicans, didn't know Democrats, they didn't know. For 15 years, I have been working in my job, just submitting applications, grant applications, getting the money, doing what I had to do, and so on. So like in the old days, I went to the newspaper and I saw jobs that I could apply. So I saw one that was the Minority Business Development Director for the state of Wisconsin. So I think I can do that. So I applied, painful exams. You have to write, pages, and, you have to submit them and things like that. And so 8 months after I submitted the application, they called me and they said, you have an interview. I interviewed with the people and so on. And, I had different interviews and so on. And eventually I got this, what is called career executive position. And I started doing this minority business development work. I had a larger staff of probably 15 people. We dealt with grants, with loans for minority businesses. We moved forward some of the African American business, Hispanic businesses, Hmong businesses, and so on. So that was very, very, very rewarding.
And how did you become a member of Governor McCallum's cabinet?
Very interesting. So when we had these programs, when I was doing the minority business development program, we had a program where we would invite somebody to give awards to minority business that had created jobs, that had done great with the business that they were involved with, et cetera. So through the system, I would invite the governor. Well, the governor at that time, Governor Tommy Thompson, he wasn't really available for these programs, but somebody said, go and talk to the lieutenant governor. So I went to Scott McCallum, that was the lieutenant governor. I talked to him, and we became friends. He would say, sure, I'll come to your program. So he would give the awards, you know. And then in the meantime, while I was dealing with that, you know, I was a coach, and I found out that he was a coach, a soccer coach. He liked sports, I like sports, so we became friends. Then that was the time when there was an election for president, and the situation was that, or the rumor was that if George W. Bush would win the election, he would take Governor Tommy Thompson to the federal government. And that happened. He won the election. Tommy Thompson went to Washington to be the head of the Department of Health. And the way the system works in Wisconsin, the law is that the lieutenant governor becomes governor. So all of a sudden, the lieutenant governor became governor, somebody that I knew fairly well. But, you know, that's one thing. But and he also invited me to programs when we became friends. When I invited him to do my programs, he would invite me to do round tables to talk about businesses and things like that, always with a minority component and so on. So he knew my speaking abilities, my financial abilities, and things like that. But very interesting, one day I was walking around the Capitol, and I talked to somebody, and they said, oh, no, the governor is putting together his management team and things like that, and his chief of staff is a guy named Mike Rogoski. I said, Mike Rogoski, he was my neighbor behind me, right with the guy that I would talk landscaping issues and things like that. I said, Mike, my friend Mike. So one day we were doing landscaping, so I went and talked to Mike, and I say, Mike, I hear that you have a high position in government. I say, yeah, blah, blah, blah. So I said, you know, I know now the governor, Scott McCallum, and, you know, I would like to help him out or whatever. And so we had a meeting. I went to his office. I told him all about my background and education, blah, blah, blah. And he called me and he said, I talked to the governor and he wants to offer you a position in his cabinet. And that was how I got the position of head of the Department of Regulation and Licensing.
So tell us about some of your experiences as head of a State Department.
Very, very demanding work. I mean, keep in mind that 15 years, 16, 17 years before, I was looking for any jobs. So all of a sudden there are 60,000 employees in state government. I had one of the top 20 jobs. But it comes with a lot of pressure, this job. So, I mean, it was very hectic. The good things were that I would have a very close interaction with the governor. Every Monday, we would meet in the governor's conference room in the Capitol. I dealt with legislators. I dealt with all the cabinet, with the National Guard commander, and a high power. And that was one thing. The other thing was the actual work that I had to do. You know, regulation and licensed doctors, dentists, pharmacists, nurses, you name it, every private detectives, cemeteries, morticians, everything. So it was a very, very complicated work, and I had a huge staff of attorneys that were prosecutors, and these prosecutors, depending of the situation, they would recommend to take the license. I went from a doctor or a dentist to psychologist and so on. So it was a very intense job that I had, because I would have to kind of agree with whatever decisions were made. And, I got they sue me personally, professionals, because they say, oh, you're taking my license and my livelihood and so on. So I would move from dealing with attorneys that were dealing with these situations to breakdown with IT to working with the governor. The governor would call me and says, come to my residence because we have to have a meeting about whatever issues we had. Sometimes I met with the other cabinet members at breakfast meetings. I was 24/7. I was on call. Sometimes I was coaching soccer, and the governor would call me and they would say, "Could you come immediately to?" I had to drop it. Very, very intense work, but I was very grateful. One thing that I have to mention in this job is that I was so lucky that I got to meet President Bush. He came to Wisconsin, and I talk about it in the book in detail, what happened. I through some other connections that I had, we invited the president of Mexico to come to Wisconsin. No president of Mexico had ever been in Wisconsin. We invited him. Well, when I say we, it was me through the governor, blah, blah, blah. But he came to Wisconsin, and it was an incredible experience. Very, very nice experience. Very demanding work, but again, I was always looking for opportunities, and high demand work. But I really enjoyed it very much.
Yeah. So what happened to you after Governor McCalls left his post as governor?
Well, he lost the election. So I had to, we have what is called restoration rights. So I went back to the Department of Commerce. That's where I used to work. And I got something that was the director of a petroleum cleanup program. And, I did that for close to 8-9 years. So it had a good staff. The work was reduced, not, the high power job, but I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, so you mentioned in your book that you and your wife were very dedicated to your children. So tell us some more about that.
Well, that we thought that was very important for us to devote time for our children. So when the governor left his post as governor, my daughters were, 11 and 13, very critical time for a child, in my opinion. So it was a good time because before I didn't have time to spend time with the children. So my wife and I, became coaches, soccer coaches. I was soccer coach since they were little to when they were out of grade school and things like that. My wife was always attending, recitals and the band concert and volunteering for teaching Spanish and things like that. So we were just totally focused at that time that was critical to the well-being of our daughters. So we were very focused in helping them however, we could. So coaches and going to school, volunteering this, volunteering that. And I had the time. Both my daughters play what is called club volleyball, which is very demanding. You have to take them to practices, and then you go all over. We went into Indianapolis, Chicago, Minneapolis, all over the place, and we were always with them. So we were always helping them out.
Yeah. And so then your children got into Princeton and Cornell. So tell us some more about how that happened.
Well, that was, for one thing, we were very lucky that they were very focused with school. In grade school, my older daughter was a salutatorian. My youngest was valedictorian. So they were good with books. Not like me, probably. More likely like my wife. But anyway, so they were good in school. And then they went to high school. They took honor classes. And, they, advanced placement, college classes, and so on. Very focused. They did sports and they volunteer and things like that. Somehow there was in one of the pre-ACT that my older daughter took, she got very high rank, over 99% of the people that took the exam, the students that took the exam. She was invited to go to the University of Notre Dame for a program. So when we talked about it, and I said, oh, maybe you can go to Notre Dame. And she said, no, 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 I heard that there is an elite group of universities that are the Ivy League. And I said, holy cow, no, this is a very expensive proposition. No? But, you know, one thing led to another, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, we went to listen to people that presented Ivy League universities, and they said, you know, the tuition is, at that time in 2010, it was like $65,000, $68,000. And I said, it's impossible. And they said, no, these universities have huge endowments. And at that time, Princeton had like $20 billion. UW-Madison, in comparison, had like, I don't know, like 1 billion or whatever. So she took the ACT. To make the story short, she was accepted in Princeton. We went to Princeton. We talked to the financial aid office and the professors and everything else. And they said, you know, cost shouldn't be an issue, because certainly it won't be for free, but you would be paying similar to what you would pay at your state university. So they arranged a package, and you know, she decided to join to go to Princeton University, and it was great. My youngest daughter went to Cornell, similar thing. She ranked high in the ACT. You know, I kind of knew the system now, and they offered her another great package, financial aid package. She would work. I mean, both of my daughters worked to help with the education, and there was a contribution from us, similar to what I could pay at UW-Madison, maybe less, but great education. So my daughter got a bachelor's degree in economics, similar to my oldest daughter, what I had gotten from Mexico 35 years or so ago. My youngest daughter, got an education in industrial and labor relations, was her degree. So those are, I would say that that's my pride, to see them graduate from the top universities of the United States. Well, some of the top universities of the United States.
Wow. You have such a very interesting life. So what are you doing now?
Well, you know, I retired when I turned 62, and I decided, somebody said, you know, you have a very interesting story. Maybe you can do something for your family or whatever. And so I thought, maybe I should write something. And I decided to write a book. I had a supervisor that said, you have a very good story. So I started writing, and so came the book. And so now I keep thinking of other ideas for books, and I will translate this into Spanish, because I have many acquaintances down in Mexico, and my book has been in Mexico as well, but some people don't understand English, so I'm writing, and you know, I do sports. I spend time with my wife. Before this talk, we were talking about children, so we go and visit our children and things like that, and so. And you know, I would say, as a thought for people, is that people should think of writing. You know, when you start writing something about your life, it comes to your mind, and you know, it doesn't have to be like this story that is from beginning to end, but it can be just a segment of your life. And I think we all have very peculiar, very interesting aspects of our lives. And you know, it took me 5 years to write the book. So people say, oh, 5 years is forever. And I say, well, even if I write or I don't write, 5 years are going to pass. So no matter what. So I have been enjoying, you know, writing and thinking of different things and so on. So, but the gist of this book is that there was a lot of effort. It wasn't easy. You know, I remember way back then when I told my parents I'm going to go try to find work in the United States. They thought, as an immigrant, it's going to be a disaster. My mom was concerned about health insurance. She said, you won't have health insurance. It's very expensive. It was, you know, those 8 months looking for work were hell. I mean, you feel like you're nothing. Everybody has jobs. And then every single opportunity, I mean, it's a lot of effort, a lot of hard work, but I'm very grateful that at the end things work for me. And what I said in my book at some point at the end, I said, you know, I think I feel like I achieved my own American dream. I'm very happy with what I have achieved, live in a wonderful city. I think I contribute a lot to this country, did good work for the state of Wisconsin, and I'm very happy.
Wow, thank you.
You're
So now we're going to open it up to questions. I am going to check our chat here and emails and stuff. But if you have any questions here in the room, now's your chance. Yeah, go ahead.
So, obviously you had to go through an immigration process, and I'm just curious, I assume you probably keep your fingers on immigration issues, and
Correct, yes.
I'm wondering what your thoughts are of what differences you see or think are happening in terms of what you experienced for your immigration story and what people, for instance, now have to experience for their immigration story.
Well, back in the days when I came back and I looked for it was called the Immigration and Naturalization System or whatever. And it was a straightforward process. You have to show a lot of information. I mean, it was hard because you had to have a sponsor that could in case you didn't find a job or whatever, somebody had to sign. In this case was the Ruby's parents that signed, you know, we will support him. That was embarrassing. You feel like nothing. It was horrible. But, you know, it was a straightforward process. I think things are a little more complicated now because, I mean, the affluence of people coming to this country from all over the world, you know, sometimes it's more complicated if you do it right, so to speak, or legal, or however you want to call it. You know, there are a lot of people that come here and extend their visas and things like that, and but it's not easy. It's not easy to become a resident of the United States, and to become a citizen is even harder. I was a resident for about 18 years before I became an American citizen. And you know, that was when I had my daughters and so on, so I thought, I'm rooted here in Wisconsin, in the United States, I'll become a citizen. And it wasn't easy. You have to go through exams and things like that. So it's not easy to get the paperwork that you need. So I did it myself. Now I think you need an attorney to help you with all the intricacies of becoming a legal resident in the United States.
Looks like you want more questions.
Sure.
So did you self-publish your book, or did you have a publisher?
No, I self-published the book. You know, I was working with the State Historical Society at some point, and you know, we talk about some concept of the book that I had in mind, and you know, it would be a long process if, you know, because you have to write it, and then they have to do some editing and things like that, and I thought, you know, I'm ready to publish my own book. So no, it was again, nothing is simple. To have a book is not simple. You have to do a lot of work. My wife helped me a lot and so on. So even though there were some options, I decided to publish it myself. And it has been great because, you know, believe it or not, I sell copies of the book. And my book is in different libraries. I have given talks to Historical Society. I have given talks in Mexico. And Kara was kind enough to invite me to do this program. So I'm having a lot of fun. And the reaction that I get from people is very, very, very different. Some people tell me, oh my gosh, your story is of somebody that is dedicated, that push forward. Somebody tells me it's about gratitude. Everything that you talk about is about gratitude. Other people tell me it's about connections. It's just connections. Some of the person told me, oh my gosh, it's a love story because of you and your wife and things like that, and your children. very different. Whereas if you go through a publisher, they will edit it according to what they feel would sell, so to speak. So I'm very happy with that I wrote it. It's exactly what I wanted to say, and it's out there. So people can buy it, and it's in the library, so very good.
I'm going to ask you if there are any copies at the Oregon Library.
Yes. It's checked out right now, but we do have a copy of the book at the library. Yep, and there's maybe a dozen other libraries in the system that have it as well. So you can put it on hold and it'll get sent here.
So do you have a big family in Mexico, and do you go often for visits? Do you have a big family in Mexico?
Yes,
and do you
yes.
go
All my
visit
family, all my cousins and everybody lives down in Mexico. So next week I fly to Mexico to see my mom that is 95 years old. So,
Wow.
yes. So that's a very, very interesting thing that you're saying. When I came to United States, my father was totally against that. He said, no, what are you gonna do? And you're gonna find work. And when I had these 8 months without finding work, he would tell me, I told you that you weren't gonna, why are you doing in a different country that is not yours? And so hard. But going back to your questions, I part of when I retired at 62, my parents were getting old, so I thought I have to go and visit it. So I spent a lot of time going back to Mexico and visiting my father passed away, but my mother is alive, so next week I go and visit her and spend some time with her.
So did they send you a lot of care packages while you were looking for a job?
It's very, very hard because they would, after 3 months, they would say, do you have a job? And I said, no, I don't. And they would say, what are you doing there? And so on. It was, and then when I got the job as a planning analyst, my father would say, this is a tiny, what kind of job is a plan? You had a high position in federal government. And so it was until I became head of an agency that he said, oh, I think it was a good move. I think it was a good move.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming with us and telling us about your life. As I said, you can check out the book from the library. You can pop over next door and put it on hold. And so thank you, Oscar.
Thank you, Kara. I really appreciate it. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So folks that are here, did you bring copies of the
Yeah,
book
I have
too?
copies.
If you're interested in purchasing a copy, you can do that and the author will sign it.
Oops.
There it is.
But you don't have to buy it.